Okay, so like we all think about making it big at some point, right? Like who hasn't daydreamed about hitting it big? But, what's it really take to get there? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, it's funny, right? We're always so focused on the end result, the fancy cars, the big houses, that we forget about the journey to get there.
Exactly. And that journey, man, that's what we're diving deep into today. We found this article called The Ultimate Sacrifices to Achieving Success and Wealth. And let me tell you, it was pretty surprising, some of the stuff we found.
Yeah, it's not about like discouraging people or anything. It's more about, taking a look at success and what it really takes. Like, what are we willing to give up? What are we trading? And is it really worth it in the end? I mean, that's the big question, right?
Totally. Okay, so the article jumps right into it, starting with something we can all relate to, family. Even if we're not trying to become billionaires or anything, balancing work and family, it can be a real struggle.
For sure. And like those demands just get bigger when you're aiming for, huge AGO success. The article uses the example of Mark Zuckerberg, like building Facebook early on meant missing out on time with his family.
It's not just him though, right?
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, the Apple guy. He didn't even start a family until much later in life, like after he'd achieved major success with Apple. So it's like a pattern or something.
It's not always about like choosing one over the other. I think it's more about understanding that to be really successful, you got to be really dedicated, especially in the beginning.
Speaking of dedication, the next sacrifice is a tough one, health. I mean, who wants to sacrifice their health? It seems kind of backward,
Yeah, the article points out how ironic it is. Like, we work our butts off to make money, and then we end up spending all that money trying to get healthy again.
Yeah, it's like they use Elon Musk as an example. The guy is notorious for his crazy work schedule, sometimes like 100 hours a week, even skipping sleep and exercise and stuff.
I mean, you got to give him credit for his dedication, but is it really sustainable? Like, in the long run, what's that going to do to his health? And I mean, it's not just him, it's anyone who pushes themselves that hard.
Yeah, that whole hustle culture thing can be kind of a trap. You got to wonder, is it worth it, like, if you end up ruining your health in the process?
Okay, so get this. The article says friendships can be a sacrifice too. Like, what?
Well, the article quotes Oprah, and she talks about how when she was building her empire, she had to distance herself from friends who weren't, like, supportive of her ambitions.
I bet that was tough. It makes you think, though, about who you need around you to really make it. Like, do you need people who challenge you or just people who cheer you on? What do you think?
It's a good question. And there's more, too. The article says hobbies, personal time, even happiness itself can be sacrifices, too. It paints this picture of, like, intense focus, putting everything you've got into one goal. I don't know. It's starting to feel a little overwhelming. Like, do we have to become, robots? No personal life, no fun, no nothing. I mean...
Well, that reminds me of Richard Branson. The guy built, like, this huge business, right? But he also, like, loves adventure and all these different things. He still has fun, even after all the success.
Okay, that's good to hear. But wait, hold on. Sleep is on the list, too. Come on, everybody needs sleep. What's that all about?
Yeah, they bring up Tim Ferriss. In the beginning, when he was building his companies, he was known for like working crazy hours and barely sleeping. But then like he totally changed his tune. Now he's all about the importance of sleep.
Oh, interesting. So even someone like him who was pushing it to the limit, he realized sleep was important after all. I wonder if maybe all these sacrifices, they're not meant to be forever. Maybe it's just like a temporary thing for those really intense periods. What do you think?
That's a good point. And we've only just scratched the surface here. There's still 8 more sacrifices the article talks about. And some of them, let me tell you, are pretty unexpected.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's a lot more. The article talks about things like your identity, entertainment, even stability and income. Yeah, income as a sacrifice.
Wait, what? Income? I thought the whole point of being successful was, making more money, not less.
Right. I mean, that's what we usually think. But think about it. Like, Sarah Blakely, she put all her savings into Spanx, or Reid Hoffman, he actually took a pay cut to start LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So they were willing to risk, maybe lose money at first to build something they really believed in.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. It's like God said, money to make money, right? Yeah. But for your career, for your dream, so it's not just about hard work. It's also about like being smart with your money and your time, I guess. Exactly. And that actually brings us to another one, comfort. The article uses Richard Branson as an example again. The guy is always pushing boundaries in business and his personal life. He seems to like embrace being uncomfortable, like it helps them grow or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like getting out of your comfort zone, right? But does everyone have to do that? I mean, some people like routine, they like stability,
Well, that's where knowing yourself comes in. It's not about like forcing yourself to do crazy stuff. It's more about recognizing that growth often happens when you challenge yourself, when you try new things and, face those fears.
Oh, speaking of fear, the article also mentions sacrificing the need for approval. Man, that one hits home. It's so easy to get caught up in what other people think, especially when you're, trying to make something of yourself.
Totally. And they use like the perfect example, Steve Jobs. The guy had this vision and he just didn't care what people thought, even if they didn't agree with him. Now, I'm not saying we should all be, dictators, but Jobs shows us how important it is to stick to your beliefs even when people disagree.
Right. It's about finding that balance, between getting feedback and still staying true to yourself, to what you believe in. It's tricky, for sure.
It is. And that actually leads to another one that's kind of surprising, pride. The article says that like holding on to your pride too much, it can actually stop you from growing.
So like being able to admit when you're wrong, learning from your mistakes, and just, always trying to improve.
You got it. They use Howard Schultz, the Starbucks guy, as an example. I mean, he built this global brand, but he also had, setbacks and failures along the way. But he learned from them, he adapted, and that's a big part of why Starbucks is so successful,
That makes me think about mentors, like finding someone who's already been there and, asking for help. It's not a weakness. It's like you're serious about getting better.
Exactly. And speaking of getting better, the last two sacrifices on the list, they're all about delayed gratification, like letting go of what you want right now and thinking about the long-term rewards.
I get it, yeah. It's easy to get caught up in the instant stuff, but to be really successful, you got to think long-term.
Exactly. The article mentions Warren Buffett and Elon Musk. They're famous for thinking long-term. They're willing to wait for the big payoff, not just the quick wins. They're building something that's going to last,
Okay, so we've gone through 16 sacrifices. It's a lot to take in, honestly. But earlier you said the article isn't trying to scare us or anything, right?
Yeah, that's really important to remember. They're not saying everyone has to give up everything to be successful or that you have to be extreme. It's more about making smart choices about your goals,
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, how do we actually use all this information? It can't just be about accepting that we're going to give up everything to reach our dreams, right?
You're right. And the good news is the article doesn't just list all these sacrifices. It also gives some practical tips, strategies we can use to, deal with these trade-offs and make choices that actually align with our values.
Okay, cool. So what are these tips? How can we use this stuff to actually help us on our journey,
Well, the first one is to really know what your goals are. It sounds simple, but a lot of times we just jump into the hustle without really figuring out what success means to us,
Yeah, true. It's like going on a trip without knowing where you want to end up.
Yeah.
You might get somewhere, but is it the right place?
Exactly. So once you know what you want, the next step is to make a plan.
Okay, so it's not just about dreaming big. It's about figuring out the actual steps to get there.
Yeah, and this plan, it needs to include what you might have to sacrifice. You got to go into it with your eyes open, knowing that to reach your goal, you might have to give up some things along the way.
Yeah, it's not all, champagne and parties like we see on TV.
Yeah.
It's about making hard choices, knowing what it might cost, and being ready for those tough decisions.
For sure. And that actually brings us to the last two tips, getting support and staying focused.
So it's not just about doing it all yourself. It's also about having people who support you and keeping yourself on track, right?
Yeah, surrounding yourself with people who, encourage you and help you, but also having that discipline to stick to your goals, even when it gets tough, And this is where knowing yourself comes in again. Are you really passionate about this goal? Does it match your values? Because if it does, then those sacrifices, they're not so bad. They're investments in your future.
It's amazing, this whole conversation, it's made me think about things differently. We started talking about all these sacrifices, but now it feels more like strategic investments, putting in the work now, making the hard choices so you can reap the benefits later.
Yeah, that's a really good way to think about it. And it all comes back to like knowing yourself, right? Understanding what's important to you and making sure your actions match those values and remembering that the path to success, well, it's not always a straight line, you know?
This deep dive has been really eye-opening. I think we've like uncovered some seriously valuable stuff from this article.
Yeah.
But I guess the big question is, and the article kind of starts with this too, like, are we really willing to do whatever it takes to be successful, to have all that wealth?
Yeah, that's a big question for sure. And after looking at all these potential sacrifices, I mean, the answer is it's complicated, you know?
Totally. But what if we change the question a little? Instead of asking what we're willing to sacrifice, what if we asked, like, which sacrifice would we be most willing to make? Because let's be real, even if we plan perfectly, some sacrifices, they're just going to happen.
Wow, that's a really interesting way to look at it. It forces us to like really think about what matters most, you know? Is it family, health, free time, financial security, and what are we okay with giving up to reach our goals?
So, like, imagine you could achieve any level of success, but you had to make one of these sacrifices. Which one would you pick and why?
Oh man, that's tough. It's like picking a favorite, you know? But if I had to choose, I think I'd be most willing to give up entertainment, like maybe watch fewer movies, spend less time online, that kind of thing. Those seem like sacrifices I could handle if it meant achieving something really important.
That's a really interesting choice. For me, I think I'd sacrifice the need for approval. I've realized I spend way too much time worrying about what other people think. Letting go of that, it would be like incredibly freeing, you know? In my personal life, A&D my work.
That's awesome. It just shows how personal this whole thing is, right? There's no right or wrong answer. It's about figuring out what works for you, what matches your values and your dreams.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap things up. Remember, this deep dive wasn't about saying ambition is bad or that success always comes with a huge price tag. It was more about encouraging all of us to be more mindful, more deliberate about how we go after our goals.
Yeah, it's about knowing the potential costs, weighing them against what you want to achieve, and ultimately, you know, making choices that lead to a life that feels good, a life that feels meaningful.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the price of success. We hope it's given you something to think about and maybe even inspired you to look at your own journey a little differently. Until next time, keep asking the tough questions, keep chasing those dreams, and keep striving for a life that feels truly successful on your own terms.
Mad Money Podcast, where the knowledge flows. Investing insights as the markets grow.